I'm pretty sure that a lot of you remember watching Looney Tunes as a kid. Well, I sure do. And my favorite character was Sylvester the cat. Until one night, back in the summer of 1998, I saw an episode that rather frightened me. But since the cartoon played at late night, when I should have already gotten to bed, I was half asleep, so I only remembered parts of it, like a creepy TV in Sylvester's room that turned on all by itself. I thought maybe it was just a nightmare. Sadly, it wasn't. 1 year later. The next summer, me and my brother were bored on an afternoon, so we decided to watch some TV. We flicked to Cartoon Network just in time when Looney Tunes was starting. It played two normal episodes of Sylvester, nothing special, except for one thing. When the second part was coming to its end, me and my brother felt like something wasn't right. We thought that it might show that certain episode once again, and it did just so. The episode didn't have the same intro as that most of the Looney Tunes cartoons did. Neither the catchy title music, it just skipped right to the title screen. It didn't even fade. It just switched right there. There was no title written on the screen. It just showed the living room of a house, and it looked like it was drawn entirely with only two colors: blood red and black as emptiness. There wasn't any music either. The only sound that could be heard during the part was a woman saying, "Directed by." The creepy thing about it was that it was in our country's native language, Hungarian. And this happened way before Cartoon Network started broadcasting in our country's native language. And it sounded like if the announcer was strangled by somebody. Then the episode started. Once again, it didn't fade to the beginning, just switched right there. It showed Sylvester standing in front of something that looked like a military base. There wasn't any music or sound either, just dead silence. Sylvester also didn't look like he did in the other cartoons. He looked bruised and badly beaten, and his eyes had no pupils. He didn't say anything. He just looked really angry. In the next scene, he entered the military base. It was empty. No guards or soldiers were there. But Sylvester still entered, and he wanted to get revenge on the people for what they did to him. So he decided to sabotage the military base by destroying all the lights hanging from the ceiling. The scene also looked very disturbing. While Sylvester was tearing down the lights, his claws grew to a ridiculous size, and they were covered in blood and oil. The only sound that could be heard during the scene was the sound of sparking electricity, which also sounded very loud and frighteningly realistic. The scene also was flashing rapidly, making it look even more scary, and also dangerous to people who suffer from epilepsy. This same scene also repeated itself 10 times until it cut to the next scene. In the next scene, Sylvester was at home. However, Granny, Tweety, or Hector were nowhere to be found. There he was all alone. His room also looked empty and scary. The floor was blood red, and the walls looked like if they were on fire. The room contained two tables, a large one that had something that looked like a toy Dalek and a screwdriver on it, a smaller one that had an ancient TV on it. There also was a window in the background, but its beams were misaligned, so it looked like an inverted crucifix. Outside was just pitch black. Not if it was like night outside, but it was like there was literally no existence outside that window. So Sylvester proceeded to repair his toy Dalek with a screwdriver. And when suddenly the TV on the smaller table behind him turned on by itself. The TV showed an extremely creepy cartoon. The background music sounded like somebody was randomly banging on an electric guitar, and the recording was reversed and played back that way. It started by showing a forest with a cartoony moon above it with an extremely creepy look on its face. A few seconds later, it switched to a long room. The room was empty, but something could be heard lurking at the end of the room, and it made a really creepy metallic thumping sound with every step it made. A few seconds later, it switched to another end of the room. Porky Pig was standing there, also looking angry, and he was holding a pistol in his hand, but he didn't look bruised like Sylvester did. He said something to the monster at the other end of the room and fired his gun a few times. After that, it went static. A few seconds later, a really loud bang was heard, and the screen faded to red. A few seconds later, the red screen faded back to Sylvester in his room, standing next to the wreckage of his TV. He looked even more angry, even more bruised, and his eyes were blood red this time. The creepy image of angry Sylvester stayed on the screen for about 10 seconds. Then it just went black. About a half a minute later, Cartoon Network came back with a normal coming up next screen.